Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me this morning for our webinar, Using Images in Emails. My name is Jill, and I'm the Training and Education Manager here at Vertical Response. And I'm going to take you through some different aspects of using images in emails. Just a couple things before I get started. First of all, this webinar is one of our shorter ones. So it will be around 30 minutes, 25, 30 minutes, and then there'll be time for Q&A at the end. So if you do think of some questions along the way, go ahead and type those into the box that you see in the GoToWebinar window, and I'll be happy to answer as many of those questions as I can at the end of the demo. One of the questions that we do get a lot on our webinars is this being recorded? And the answer is yes, I am recording this. I usually put the recorded versions of the webinars up on our help page about a week after the webinar has happened. So look for this to go up there next week. So with that, let's go over some of the things that we're going to talk about today. I'm going to take you through some basics of images, and a lot of these are things that I get questions about a lot. Some of this might be information that you've heard before, but for some people on the webinar it might be new. And I'm going to take you through some do's and don'ts, and I'm going to go from basic information to more technical information. So if you're looking for something a little more advanced, that will be at the end, but stick with me and you'll probably pick up a couple of things along the way as well. So with that, let's go ahead and start taking a look at some of this. So some of the basic information that you need to keep in mind when you're creating or using images for your emails, especially when you're using them in our system, they do need to be saved as a JPEG or a GIF. In order to upload them into your VR library. So if you want us to host the images, they do need to be a JPEG or a GIF. 72 DPI is just fine for the resolution. These are images that are going to be viewed online. Most monitors can't really display something that's crisper than that, so there isn't any reason to have a bigger image or a more defined image. If you're printing something, then a higher resolution is of course better. But for online, 72 is fine. If you store the images in the library in your Vertical Response account, we will automatically save them as 72 DPI, just so you know. For images that are online, you need them to be saved in RGB, and this is the color code for the image. If you're printing, they will be CMYK. CMYK won't work in your emails, and you will see strange little boxes, or you just won't see your image at all if it's saved as CMYK. For the most part, if you're getting images from your website, for example, and you're going to use those in your email, or you're finding them in the image library that we provide or something online, they're already going to be RGB because for them to show up online, they will be RGB. If you have somebody creating images for you and you happen to do anything with print, maybe you do brochures, maybe you have some kind of an event that you print out flyers for, any image that's been created for printing will be CMYK, so you need to make sure it's saved correctly, otherwise it's not going to work. But like I said, if it's already online, it's already RGB. You also want to keep your images fairly light, under 25K. Anything that's bigger than that could take a while to load, and people who are impatient or people who have slower internet connections, and that's really important to keep in mind, might not stick around for larger images to load. So you want to try to keep them fairly small so that people with slower internet connections will see them. Also, you don't want to have a ton of images in your email for the same reason. If it takes a while for them to load, people will get impatient and they'll move on to another email instead of yours. Some questions that I get quite a bit on a lot of the webinars and demos that I do is what size should my images be? So if you're going to be doing a banner type image like at the top of your email or at the bottom of your email, you want it to be around 500 to 550 pixels wide. And the reason that you want it that wide is because you want your email to be around 600 pixels. So having it at 500 to 550 will allow for any padding or any additional border maybe that you have with the email that you're using. Pushing your email wider than about 600 pixels makes it difficult for not only your recipients who are getting it in their inbox. If they have to scroll back and forth to read your email, that's going to frustrate them and you could lose them. But also people who are looking at your email on a mobile device could also run into problems if it's wider than 600. They'll have to do a lot of scrolling as well. So by keeping your images fairly small, it will help keep your email width total pretty small so that people will be able to see your whole email. If you're putting an image within the body of the email, so you have maybe an article or you have a paragraph of information, and then you're putting in an image, that image should be about 150 to 200 pixels wide. Again, you're going to have text wrapping around the image, so you need to allow for that kind of space. Plus, if the template or layout that you're using has maybe a column or other information in the email, having an image that's wider than 200 pixels could again push your email to exceed that 600 pixel width. So again, it's important to keep those fairly small. You can still see them and it's easy to see details in the images even at 200 pixels wide. If you're using social media icons in your email, and you should be, we have some built into our system, but if you're putting in, a like us on Facebook button or something like that, social media icons are usually around 40 pixels square. So if you make them all 40 pixels, then they'll all have a consistent size when you're placing them in your email. And again, for social media icons, if you haven't been to one of our webinars before, you can find, if you do a search online, you can find all kinds of social media icons. People spend a lot of time creating really cool looking icons. You can go to the social media sites themselves, so Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever social media platform that you're using, they'll have them available at their site. But if you want something that's a little different, you can also get them just by doing a search online. So some tips. So I have a couple of slides with some tips and then some do's and don'ts. You don't want to have your email to be comprised of just images or just one big image. And it's really important to keep in mind what your recipients are going to see when they open their email. So if you're having an event and you have a specific date that you're trying to get people to sign up by, or a date of your event in the email, put that in the text, don't put it in the image. Your call to action, whatever you're trying to get people to do, you don't want it only to be in an image. Using a call to action button is great, but also make sure that you have call to action that's not an image. So anything that's really important should not be only in an image. You can certainly put it in an image, but also include it in the text of the email. And again, the reason is that since most email programs block images, at least by default until the recipient turns them on, you want to make sure that the people who are looking at your email are getting the important information they need if they haven't turned the images on. Using just one image or two images can be a problem. I am going to talk about this a little bit more later, how to get around some of the issues that can come up with this. But if you aren't using alt text, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, and if you aren't using links or anything like that, this is something that your recipients can see. So I have a sample here on the slide of what an email looks like with the images blocked. If you don't include additional text, this is the information that people get. There's no information. As a recipient, I'm not sure I would want to turn on the images because I don't know what this email is about. This is just a bunch of blocked images, which isn't good. It isn't good for your recipients to want to feel like you're sending something important to them. Another reason that you don't want to send an email with just one big image is that there can be delivery issues. This is something that spammers do have a tendency to do. They'll send emails that are comprised of just images. Since most ISPs know that trick, if your email is only an image, it could go to the spam folder. So again, you want to have a balance of text and images in your email so that your recipients are going to be able to get the information that you want them to get. If you're going to have some larger images in your email, you want to put those a little bit lower in the email itself. the top part of your email, the part before people start scrolling, that's usually called above the fold. That's actually a newspaper term, but it got applied to things happening online. So above the fold is before anyone has to scroll. So if somebody's looking at your email in their inbox, if they're looking at a preview pane, the information that they see before they scroll is the information they're going to take in and try to decide what they're going to do with your email. Are they going to read it? Are they going to move on? Are they going to delete it? Are they going to save it for later? They're going to make their decision based on what they see at the top of the email. So you want to make sure that the top of the email has the important information. And by putting a large image at the top, you could run into a problem with people not seeing what you want them to see. Also, if images are being blocked, the top part of their email is going to look a little unusual for them, and that might cause them not to look any further. This is an example of our VR Buzz newsletter. Where the vertical response logo is, that is an image at the top, but it's fairly small. And then the important information we have on the left-hand side our table of content, so you can see what other information is in the email and you can jump to that. Also, the note from the CEO actually has information about what's going on in this particular email, so people can go and click on those links and go to other parts of the email. So make sure you're putting the most important information at the top so that people can get what you need them to get without having them work really hard. The more you make them work, turn on the images to find out what's going on, etc., the less likely they're going to do it. So I mentioned alt text for a second, and so I'm going to go into a little more details about this. Hopefully this isn't new to you. I've been talking about alt text for a really long time. I know not everybody uses it, but it's important to use alt text. The reason that alt text is important is that most email programs, as I mentioned, block images until the recipient turns them on. Alt text is actually something that's set up kind of on the back side of the image. So instead of seeing a broken image icon like we saw in one of those previous slides, they'll see whatever you put in the alt text. Now, excuse me, alt text is kind of an interesting thing. It was originally created for people with visual impairments using screen readers, and the screen reader would read the alt text so that they would know what the image was. But with email clients more and more blocking images, showing the alt text makes a lot of sense. So this way, the person receiving the email can get more information about what's going on in the email, even if they haven't seen the image. So it's really important that behind all of your images, you're adding alt text. So you can put information about the image. If you're having an event, that would be great. If you're selling a product, just put what the image product is and maybe a little bit of information about it. If you have your logo, I would usually recommend that you put your company name. Don't put an acronym unless that is really what your company is called. Make it really clear for your recipients who's sending the email. You could even put in a URL to your website just to make it clear who's sending it. With the images turned off, branding is a little tougher because people aren't going to be able to see your logo or your color scheme or anything like that to be able to associate it with your company. So by including information about your company name or URL in the logo area, that will give people some information. The screenshot that you see here is a company that sends out emails that are just images. So you can work a little bit with email programs to try to get more information to your recipients. So all of the text that you see in this screenshot is actually alt text. So they set this up behind their images. So if the images were being blocked, their recipients would still know what the email was about. Now, I would still suggest that you have a balance of text and images. Doing just images is a little tricky for your recipients. They want to see what's going on without having to do a lot of work like turning on the images. So what they do here is add a lot of text, including on that bottom line where it says 3-hour lunch break, today only. They tell you it's 40% off. There's a promo code. That whole thing is alt text. That is not text in the email. That's actually on the back of the images. Once you click the display image link, all of this text goes away and this information is in the images that appear. So this is why alt text is important, so that you can get this type of information to your recipients even if they're not looking at the images. Ultimately, what you want them to do is turn the images on so that you can track that they opened it, and then click on a link and go to your website. You can't get people to do something that you want them to do all the time, but if you give them more information in your images, that could compel them to do one or both of those actions that you want them to take. So in our system, when you're adding your images to your email, you will see this. This is the image properties window, and alt text is the last box at the very bottom. So this is where you want to be really careful about the information that you're putting in there. Now, the picture that I have here is a picture of Alcatraz. You can certainly call this picture Alcatraz because that is what it is. But I could also put something more compelling in here, like click here for more information about our Alcatraz event, or click here and find out what's going on this February with our organization. You know, something that makes people want to know what's going on and turn the images on and then click through. So background images. So we did alt text, and alt text is a do. Try to do that for all of your images in your emails. Background images are a don't. And the reason is, there's a couple of reasons. The most important reason is that most email programs are either going to have a problem rendering them or just going to block it altogether, just strip it out. So your email will end up not looking quite as you want it to, and it's different email programs do different things with background images. So you're better off either setting up just a background color instead, or just not using background images. It's just really difficult. The other thing, and hopefully it comes through on my slide, is that it also makes it a little more difficult to read the text. More information competing with the text behind your, or more information competing with the text of your email can cause your recipients not to get the information that they're looking for, and again, cause them to move on. This is a lovely picture, and this is going to come up again, but it's distracting from the text of the slide. So it's important that, although it might be boring that you have a white background with black text or dark gray text, that's usually a little bit easier on the eyes, you're just ultimately trying to get people to read your email and take some kind of action. So make it easy on them so that they can do what you're trying to get them to do. Image maps, also a don't. Now this is something that's a little bit more technical, doing the background image and doing image maps. Image maps are when you get an email that has an image in it and you can click different parts of the image and have a different part of a website or a different website altogether pop up. So you could have like different text on an image and people can click it and go someplace else. That's kind of difficult to set up for email programs and have it work correctly. Some of the email programs out there will support these image maps and some don't. The biggest issue with image maps is if the images are turned off, and most browser-based email programs have them turned off by default, is where the problem with the image maps will come in, because the links won't function correctly without the images. So if the images are being blocked, then the maps aren't going to work. Also, anybody who's getting a plain text version of your email could run into some strange issues with the image map links in the text version. So if you still feel like you should do an image map, make sure that the text version is cleaned up. You go into the text version and make sure that the links make sense to whoever's getting the text version. Also, if people are visually impaired, the image maps also cause a little bit of a problem if they're using a screen reader as well. So image maps are don't, mostly because they probably aren't going to work for most of your recipients. It's just kind of tricky. And speaking of tricky, image slices. So even though I just said a number of times that using an email that is just images is not a great idea, you can create an email that will have a better chance of having your recipient open it, be able to see the information, turn on your images, and not get caught in a spam folder. If you use image slices, that can actually work a little bit better than having one huge image, because that can be a problem for delivery. Image slices are a little bit easier on delivery and on your recipients. So we're going to talk about this for a little bit, and I'm going to show you how to do this. Now, again, this might be a little more than what you would normally do, but we have lots of different people doing different things in emails, and so you could test this out if you wanted to, but also if you're working at an agency, for example, and you have clients who want emails that are just image-based, this is what you can do to try to get around some of the issues that come up when you're sending to different types of email programs. They all handle HTML and different things differently. So this is kind of a workaround. So first of all, what you're going to do is slice your images. And it is exactly that. It sounds just like what you're doing. You'll cut up your image into smaller pieces, and you can use different programs. So you can use Dreamweaver, Photoshop if you have one of those. I don't have one of those programs. So there is also this online image splitter. It's free to use, so you can use that, and I'm sure if you did a search online you could find some other ones that will split your images for you. When you're doing images in emails, they all must be hosted, and this is true for any image, whether you're doing slices or not. If you upload it into your vertical response library, we're hosting it for you. If you don't put it in the library, then it needs to be hosted someplace, so you would have to host it on your side. Again, use alt text because you're still creating an email that's comprised of a lot of smaller images. You want to make sure that your recipients know what's going on in the email, so use alt text in your images. I'm also going to talk about a problem that crops up in Gmail when you're using image slices. Gmail made some changes about 1.5 years, 2 years ago for how their emails display, and if you're using image slices, you have to add this style tag in your image URL, and I'll show you what all of that looks like so that you don't get these white lines, and I'll show you what that looks like too. So this is just a screenshot of the tool that I use to split my image. So this is the online image splitter. This was the free tool that I used. There's lots of ads on this page, but essentially what you want to pay attention to is up here. So you can set up how many rows you want your image split in and how many columns. Just for demonstration purposes, I did fairly large pieces, but you can set it up however is going to work best for you. And you can download your split up images. And now let's go bring up my account here. So I'm going to bring up my vertical response account. So I've set up an example, and I'll show you how to do this. So this is an example of using image slices. So this is my image. It's all chopped up into 6 pieces. If I do preview here, this is what my email is going to look like. It goes back together. To set this up, it's pretty straightforward. So I'm going to set up a new one. You're going to need to use the Canvas tool. You can't use the Wizard tool for this one. Let's just say I set something up here. Now, to keep my email at a certain width, I'm going to use a template, and I'll show you this trick here. It doesn't. If you go to the second page, we have just borders, so I'm just going to pick this really plain border. So this is going to keep my email from spreading out really wide, and it's going to keep me from having to go in and write HTML if I start from scratch. So I can do this. I'm going to get rid of some of the information that's in here. I don't need all of this text in here. So I'm going to leave a little bit of text in my email because I am, of course, a big proponent of adding text. And then what I'm going to do is add a table to put my image slices in. So I'm just going to go in here, and I want my table to be the same as I split my images up so that I can easily plug in my image slices. So this happens to be the same. It's 2 columns and 3 rows. I don't want a border, and I don't want cell padding. Cell padding is going to put spaces around the images and then they won't line up. So turn all of those off. Click OK. So here is my table. Actually, you know what? It's probably a little hard for you to see with the border turned off. So if I turn my border on again, you guys can see it. So there you go. You can see there's 2 columns, and then there's 6 little boxes for me to plug my 6 image slices in. I've already uploaded these into my library. If you don't know how to do this, just give me a quick shout on the window. I'm sorry, in your GoToWebinar window, and I can show you this at the end. You don't need to change any of the setup here. Just add alt text. Remember, use alt text. Oops. Put alt text into your image, but you don't want to change anything else. And then this part's a little tricky. Go grab my other image. So here's what my images are going to look like. I uploaded them in the order that they go so that it's not quite the puzzle that it could be. Okay, so here's my picture with all my slices. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn off the border because you can see it now. So I don't want a border on this. So at this point, you would be able to come in here and add links to your images. So if you click on the little link icon, just select your image, select the link icon, and you can have people click to wherever you want. This will help you get around that issue with image maps. So if you slice up your image instead of using maps, it'll make it a little bit easier for you to be able to send people to different websites or different parts of your site with one image, as far as they know it's one image. So set up the links, set up your alt text. So I'm going to go here to the next step. So here is my email with my image slice. Now I have a list that I'm going to send tests to. So as I mentioned before, there is an issue with Gmail. So we're going to take a look at that in just a minute, what that's going to look like in Gmail and what that looks like in not Gmail. I'm going to bring up this. So I sent one here. So here's my picture sent to MacMail. This is what it looks like. You can't tell that it's really in 6 different pieces. You can also turn off this border, and if you don't know how to do that, I can tell you in just a minute. So we'll just pretend. Hope Gmail sends it soon. So here is my Gmail image. So this is the thing that Gmail does. It adds these breaks if you're using image slices. So on my slide, I showed you what you need to do to make this work if you know you're mailing to people who are on Gmail. So if we go over here to my draft email that I set this up in, my slices example. So once you have your images in place, you'll need to come into the code, and then you need to add this right here where it says style equals display block. So display colon block semicolon and then whatever else is in that style tag. Adding the images in will automatically have this style tag put in there, so you just need to add this display colon block, and that will take off that problem with Gmail. So let me show you what this looks like when you add that. So you have to do that for all of your images. So that would be for all 6 image slices that I put into this email. So if I send another test, let me delete this, otherwise we'll see that again. So here is the one that I did the changes to. So now you don't see those horizontal white lines. So that is something that you need to do for people who receive the email in Gmail, is adding that little piece of text. So that's how you would do image slices, and we actually get quite a few questions about this, so that's one of the things that I wanted to include in this webinar. So I'm going to bring up my deck here. So these are some resources for you when you get started with your images. So our help site will help you with some image basics, so how to resize your images, how to upload them into your VR account, but I can't answer those questions right now, but the help site can help you with that. Our blog, blog.verticalresponse.com, is actually a great resource for just about anything email marketing or social media related. There's tons of information there. Including using images in your emails. There's actually quite a few blogs. I checked yesterday. Also, if you want more information about that Gmail piece of code that you need to add to your images, we do have a guide. It's a free guide. So the easiest way to get to our guides page, we have a lot of guides, but the easiest way to get there is to go to our website, verticalresponse.com. Click on the tab that says resources, and you'll see the free marketing guides. The one that you want to take a look at is HTML tips for designing your email, and you can actually see that snippet of code that you need to use for Gmail. So with that, I can go ahead and start taking questions.